Picture this. You're at work building what feels like a genuine connection with someone special. The conversations flow naturally, the shared moments feel meaningful, and you begin to believe that something beautiful is developing right there in your professional environment. Then reality hits like a sledgehammer. That connection you treasured was never what you thought it was, and you're left questioning everything you believed about trust, loyalty, and your ability to read human nature. The morning shift at Romano's restaurant always began with the familiar clatter of dishes and the hum of industrial machines. But that particular Sunday carried something different in the air. Marcus, the quiet dishwasher who'd been working there for 3 years, had developed a routine that spoke volumes about his character. Arriving 30 minutes before his shift, organizing his station with methodical precision, and greeting everyone with a respectful nod. His loyalty to the establishment was unquestionable, earning him the trust of management and colleagues alike. But on this Sunday morning, he carried a small paper bag that would set in motion a chain of events that would test his faith in human nature. The professional environment he'd grown to love was about to become the stage for a lesson in vulnerability and resilience. As he placed the carefully selected breakfast items on the break room table, his heart carried the weight of genuine intention, a gesture born from weeks of quiet observation and growing admiration. What many people fail to understand about workplace dynamics is that genuine connections often bloom in the most unexpected corners of our professional environment. Marcus had noticed Sarah, the new morning waitress, skipping breakfast during her first week, always rushing in just minutes before her shift with that telltale look of someone who'd chosen sleep over sustenance. His gesture wasn't born from romantic desperation or calculated manipulation. It was the kind of thoughtful kindness that separates exceptional human beings from the ordinary masses. The croissant was fresh from the bakery next door. The orange juice was freshly squeezed, and the coffee was prepared exactly how he'd observed her making it during her breaks. This level of attention to detail reveals something profound about Marcus's character. He was the type of person who noticed what others needed before they even asked. In a world where frustration often drives people to selfishness, Marcus chose generosity as his default response. His actions that morning would soon teach him that not everyone operates from the same moral foundation. The beauty of authentic gestures lies in their simplicity and the genuine emotion they carry, yet they also expose us to the possibility of profound disappointment. When Sarah discovered the breakfast waiting for her, accompanied by a small note that simply read, "Hope your day starts well," something shifted in the restaurant's atmosphere. Marcus watched from his station as her face lit up with surprise and gratitude, a reaction so pure and genuine that it validated every ounce of effort he'd invested in the gesture. Her smile seemed to brighten not just her face but the entire kitchen. And for a moment, Marcus felt the warm satisfaction that comes from making someone else's day better. Little did he know that this moment of connection would soon become the foundation for a painful lesson about the difference between appreciation and affection. But there's something even more revealing about human nature that would unfold in the days ahead, something that would challenge everything Marcus believed about trust and authentic connection in the workplace. The following morning brought an energy shift that even the most observant workplace veterans would recognize as significant. Sarah began finding reasons to venture into the kitchen during her breaks, her presence transforming Marcus's solitary workspace into something resembling a sanctuary of shared moments. Their conversations flowed with the natural ease of two people discovering unexpected common ground. She spoke about her dreams of opening her own cafe, while he shared stories about the culinary techniques he'd learned from watching the head chef work. These weren't the superficial exchanges that typically characterize workplace interactions. They were the building blocks of genuine connection, seasoned with laughter and punctuated by comfortable silences. Marcus found himself looking forward to work in ways he hadn't experienced in years, his daily routine now anchored by these precious intervals of authentic human connection. The professional environment that had once felt purely transactional now pulsed with possibility and warmth. Each shared laugh and meaningful glance seemed to validate his belief that good things come to those who approach others with genuine heart and consistent kindness. The third day brought subtle changes that only someone truly invested in another person's well-being would notice. Sarah began saving half of her employee meal to share with Marcus during their kitchen conversations, creating a ritual of reciprocity that seemed to balance the scales of their budding connection. Their discussions grew deeper, touching on family backgrounds, personal aspirations, and the kind of vulnerable revelations that typically emerge when two people feel safe in each other's presence. Marcus noticed how Sarah's eyes would light up when she talked about her ambitions, and how she seemed genuinely interested in his perspectives on life and work. The other kitchen staff began to notice their connection too, with good-natured teasing that only served to strengthen the bond they were forming. For Marcus, these moments represented something precious, proof that loyalty and genuine care could create meaningful relationships, even in the most unlikely circumstances. The trust they were building felt solid and reciprocal, a foundation strong enough to support something beautiful and lasting. Thursday arrived with Marcus carrying a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've found something special worth protecting. He'd begun to imagine possibilities beyond their workplace connection, perhaps coffee dates after shifts, weekend conversations that weren't constrained by kitchen timers, or even the kind of deep partnership that grows from mutual respect and genuine affection. Sarah's consistent warmth and engagement had created a sense of security that allowed Marcus to begin envisioning a future where their connection could flourish outside the confines of Romano's restaurant. Their shared moments had become the highlight of his days, transforming his perception of work from mere obligation to joyful anticipation. The way she remembered details from their previous conversations, asked thoughtful follow-up questions, and seemed genuinely invested in his thoughts and feelings convinced Marcus that what they were building together was authentic and mutual. As he prepared for another day of shared breaks and meaningful exchanges, Marcus felt the quiet satisfaction that comes from learning to open one's heart to possibility while maintaining the patience necessary for genuine connection to develop naturally. Friday morning would bring the first crack in the foundation Marcus had been carefully building, though its significance wouldn't become clear until much later. Sarah didn't appear for her usual pre-shift conversation, and when she finally arrived, she seemed distracted and slightly rushed, subtle changes that Marcus attributed to normal workplace stress rather than any shift in their connection. Her smile still warmed the room when their eyes met across the kitchen, and she still found time for a brief conversation during her break, but something almost imperceptible had changed in her energy. Marcus, being the kind of person who tends to give others the benefit of the doubt, dismissed his subtle unease as overthinking, and focused instead on maintaining the supportive presence that had become his trademark. The professional environment continued to function smoothly around them, but beneath the surface, forces were already in motion that would soon test everything Marcus believed about human nature and the reliability of apparent connections. Sometimes the most profound disappointments announce themselves not with dramatic revelations, but with the quiet absence of familiar warmth, and Marcus was about to learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. The power of genuine surprise lies in its ability to reveal the authentic character of both the giver and receiver, and Sarah's reaction that Sunday morning painted a portrait of someone who had rarely experienced thoughtful gestures in her professional environment. Her words carried the weight of someone who had grown accustomed to transactional relationships, where kindness came with strings attached or expectations clearly defined. The way her eyes widened as she discovered the carefully arranged breakfast spoke to a deeper truth about her life experiences. She had learned to expect little from others, making Marcus's gesture all the more impactful. Her genuine surprise wasn't just about the breakfast itself. It was about encountering someone who had noticed her needs without being asked and had taken action without expecting anything in return. In a world where workplace interactions often feel scripted and superficial, Marcus had managed to create a moment of authentic human connection that caught Sarah completely off guard. The trust that began to form in that moment was built on the foundation of unexpected kindness, meeting genuine appreciation. What Sarah didn't realize was that her reaction would become the catalyst for Marcus's growing investment in their potential connection. When someone tells you that nobody has ever done something thoughtful for them before, it creates a profound sense of responsibility and opportunity, a chance to be the person who changes their perspective on what they deserve from others. Marcus heard her words not just as gratitude for breakfast, but as an invitation to show her what consistent kindness and attention could look like in her daily life. Her admission revealed a vulnerability that made Marcus want to protect and nurture the spark of joy he'd managed to kindle in her morning routine. The professional environment around them continued its familiar rhythm, but within that space, something extraordinary was beginning to take shape. Marcus found himself thinking about her words throughout his shift, replaying the moment when surprise melted into genuine warmth, and planning how he might continue to bring that same light to her eyes. The seeds of deeper loyalty were being planted in soil that seemed fertile and welcoming. The beauty of Sarah's honest reaction lay in its complete lack of pretense or calculated response. She was simply a person who had been touched by unexpected kindness and wanted to acknowledge it properly. Her follow-up questions about why he had thought to bring her breakfast revealed someone who was genuinely curious about his motivations rather than suspicious of his intentions. This openness created space for Marcus to share his own perspective on workplace community and the importance of looking out for one another. Conversations that deepened their connection beyond the initial gesture. Sarah's appreciation seemed to extend beyond the material aspects of the breakfast to encompass the thoughtfulness and care that had motivated Marcus's actions. She began to see him not just as the quiet dishwasher who kept to himself, but as someone with depth, empathy, and the rare ability to notice what others needed. However, what neither of them understood in that moment was how differently they would interpret the significance of this growing connection, and how those different interpretations would soon lead to a painful lesson about the gap between appreciation and affection. The days following Sarah's grateful response created a dynamic that felt both natural and exciting for Marcus, who had never experienced someone so openly appreciative of his efforts to brighten their day. Sarah's willingness to seek him out during breaks, to share stories about her life, and to express genuine interest in his thoughts and experiences seemed to confirm that their connection was mutual and growing stronger. Her laughter at his quiet observations about restaurant life, her attentiveness when he shared memories from his childhood, and her habit of saving small treats to share with him during their conversations, all pointed towards someone who valued their developing friendship. Marcus began to interpret these behaviors through the lens of someone who was learning to trust again, allowing himself to believe that Sarah's appreciation was evolving into something deeper and more meaningful. The professional environment that had once felt isolating now buzzed with possibility, each shared moment adding another layer to what Marcus hoped was becoming a foundation for lasting connection. Her consistent warmth and engagement convinced him that he had found someone who understood the value of genuine, patient loyalty. What Marcus couldn't see was that Sarah's appreciation, while entirely sincere, operated within a different framework than his growing emotional investment. Her gratitude for his kindness was real and heartfelt, but it existed in the category of workplace friendship rather than romantic possibility, a distinction that would prove crucial in the coming days. Sarah valued Marcus's consistent presence and thoughtful gestures, but she experienced them as the actions of a caring colleague, rather than the courtship behaviors Marcus was beginning to hope they represented. Her openness about her personal life, her willingness to share meals and conversations, and her genuine enjoyment of his company all felt like natural responses to someone who had shown her consistent kindness in an environment where such gestures were rare. The trust she was developing in Marcus was the trust of friendship and professional loyalty, built on appreciation for his character and reliability. She had no idea that her natural warmth and gratitude were being interpreted as signs of romantic interest, nor could she foresee how this misunderstanding would soon create a situation fraught with disappointment and painful learning. The week that followed Sarah's grateful acknowledgement represented a golden period for Marcus, who felt that he had finally found someone who appreciated not just his gestures but his character and perspective on life. Their daily conversations became increasingly personal and meaningful, with Sarah sharing details about her past relationships, her family dynamics, and her hopes for the future that Marcus interpreted as signs of growing intimacy and trust. She seemed genuinely interested in his opinions about everything from restaurant management to life philosophy, asking follow-up questions that suggested she valued his insights and wanted to understand his worldview better. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he hadn't experienced in years, sharing vulnerabilities and dreams that he had kept carefully guarded in previous relationships. The professional environment that surrounded them seemed to fade into background noise during these precious moments of connection, creating a sense of privacy and intimacy that felt both safe and exciting. Sarah's consistent presence and engagement had become the anchor point of his days, the reason he looked forward to coming to work, and the source of a quiet confidence that love was possible for someone like him. The subtle art of human connection often reveals itself in the small gestures and quiet moments that accumulate over time, and Marcus had become a master at recognizing and appreciating these signs of growing closeness. Sarah's habit of bringing him small treats, her way of checking in on his mood when he seemed tired, and her tendency to linger just a little longer during their conversations all seemed to confirm that what they were building together was special and mutual. Her laughter came easily in his presence. Her body language was open and welcoming, and her willingness to share personal stories suggested a level of trust that Marcus had rarely experienced with anyone. The way she remembered details from their previous conversations and asked thoughtful follow-up questions convinced Marcus that he occupied a special place in her thoughts and daily experience. As the days passed, he began to allow himself to imagine a future where their workplace connection could blossom into something lasting and beautiful, built on the solid foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and genuine appreciation for each other's character. Little did Marcus know that his interpretation of Sarah's behavior was about to collide with a reality that would challenge everything he believed about reading the signs of reciprocal affection and the reliability of apparent emotional connection. The transformation of a workplace from mere functional space to sanctuary of connection happens gradually, then suddenly, and Marcus found himself witnessing this metamorphosis with wonder and growing hope. Sarah's deliberate visits to the kitchen during her breaks created a rhythm that both of them began to anticipate and treasure, turning mundane work shifts into opportunities for meaningful human connection. Her presence transformed his solitary dishwashing station into something resembling a cozy cafe corner, where two people could escape the demands of their professional environment and simply enjoy each other's company. The conversations that bloomed during these stolen moments revealed layers of compatibility that surprised them both. Shared humor about difficult customers, similar perspectives on work-life balance, and complementary dreams about future possibilities. Marcus discovered that Sarah possessed a sharp wit and genuine curiosity about the world that made every conversation feel fresh and engaging. The trust they were building felt organic and mutual, each shared story and comfortable silence adding another brick to the foundation of what Marcus hoped was becoming something beautiful and lasting. These daily encounters became the highlight of his existence, proof that patience and genuine kindness could indeed create the conditions for authentic loyalty and deep connection. The art of workplace flirtation, when it emerges naturally from genuine appreciation and mutual interest, creates an energy that transforms even the most mundane environment into something charged with possibility. Their shared snacks became a ritual of reciprocity that spoke to something deeper than mere friendship. Sarah would bring homemade cookies, Marcus would share fruit from his lunch, and together they created a small oasis of intimacy within the bustling restaurant atmosphere. The discreet glances they exchanged across the kitchen carried the weight of shared secrets and growing attraction, silent communications that felt more meaningful than the spoken conversations happening around them. Marcus found himself studying the way Sarah's eyes crinkled when she laughed at his observations, how she had a habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating on his words, and the particular smile she reserved for moments when they were alone together. The professional environment that surrounded them seemed to fade into background noise during these precious intervals, creating a bubble of privacy where their connection could develop without external pressure or judgment. Each day brought new discoveries about their compatibility and shared sensibilities, building Marcus's confidence that what they were creating together was both rare and worth nurturing with patience and care. The psychology of hope in romantic connection operates on a dangerous principle. We tend to interpret neutral behaviors through the lens of our desires, creating narratives that may exist more in our imagination than in reality. Marcus began to read significance into every interaction with Sarah, from the way she seemed to time her breaks to coincide with his quieter moments, to how she always positioned herself close enough during their conversations that he could catch subtle hints of her perfume. Her willingness to share personal stories about her childhood, her dreams of traveling, and her complicated relationship with her family felt like the kind of vulnerability that only emerges when someone trusts you completely. The comfortable silences that punctuated their conversations seemed pregnant with unspoken attraction, and Marcus found himself believing that Sarah was experiencing the same growing affection that had begun to dominate his thoughts, both at work and at home. The loyalty he felt toward her was absolute. He had begun to structure his days around their interactions and his future hopes around the possibility of their connection developing beyond the confines of Romano's restaurant. But sometimes the most painful disappointments emerge not from deception or betrayal, but from the simple reality that two people can share genuine warmth and connection while experiencing entirely different emotions about what that connection means. The beauty of their daily interactions lay in their naturalness and apparent reciprocity, creating a sense of inevitability that made Marcus believe they were building towards something significant and mutual. Sarah's laughter at his quiet observations about restaurant life came easily and genuinely, suggesting someone who truly enjoyed his company and found value in his perspective on their shared work experience. Her questions about his life outside the restaurant, his hobbies, his family, his thoughts about the future, seemed to indicate genuine interest in understanding him as a complete person rather than just a workplace acquaintance. The way she would sometimes seek him out specifically when she had a few minutes free, bypassing other colleagues to spend time in his corner of the kitchen, felt like clear evidence that he held a special place in her daily routine and emotional landscape. Marcus began to interpret her consistent presence and engagement as signs that she was developing feelings that mirrored his own growing affection and commitment to their connection. The trust they had built through weeks of shared conversations and mutual support felt solid enough to support the weight of deeper emotional investment, and Marcus allowed himself to begin hoping that their workplace friendship was evolving into something that could flourish beyond the boundaries of their professional environment. The ritual of their daily interactions had become so integrated into the fabric of Marcus's existence that he couldn't imagine returning to the solitary routine that had characterized his work life before Sarah's arrival. Their conversations had developed their own rhythm and shorthand, inside jokes about difficult customers, shared observations about their colleagues' quirks, and the comfortable familiarity that emerges when two people begin to know each other's thoughts and reactions intimately. Sarah's presence during his breaks had transformed what used to be lonely intervals into the most anticipated parts of his day, creating a sense of partnership and mutual support that felt both professionally and personally satisfying. The way she would appear in the kitchen doorway with a smile that seemed reserved specifically for him made Marcus feel seen and valued in ways he hadn't experienced in previous relationships. Her consistency in seeking out his company, even on busy days when she could have easily skipped their usual conversation, convinced Marcus that their connection was as meaningful to her as it had become to him. The appreciation they shared for each other's character and perspective had created what felt like a solid foundation for something lasting and beautiful, built on genuine compatibility and mutual respect. The accumulation of small moments and shared experiences had created a sense of intimacy that Marcus treasured and protected with careful attention to Sarah's comfort and boundaries. He noticed how she seemed more relaxed and genuinely herself during their kitchen conversations than she appeared when dealing with customers or interacting with other staff members, suggesting that their connection provided her with a refuge from the performative aspects of restaurant work. Her willingness to share complaints about difficult aspects of her job, to seek his advice about workplace challenges, and to express genuine interest in his thoughts about restaurant operations felt like the kind of trust and loyalty that forms the basis of lasting partnerships. The discreet nature of their growing closeness added an element of specialness that made Marcus feel like they were creating something precious that deserved protection from the casual observations and potential interference of their colleagues. Their shared glances across the busy kitchen carried messages of understanding and connection that needed no words, creating a private language of affection that seemed to confirm the mutual nature of their growing bond. As days turned into weeks, Marcus found himself believing with increasing certainty that patience and genuine care had finally brought him to the threshold of a relationship built on authentic appreciation and compatible dreams for the future. The Wednesday of their second week of daily interactions brought a subtle shift that Marcus initially attributed to Sarah having a particularly challenging day with demanding customers and schedule changes. She still sought him out during her break, still shared stories and laughter, but something almost imperceptible had changed in her energy and engagement level during their conversation. Her attention seemed slightly divided, and she checked her phone more frequently than usual, behaviors that Marcus generously interpreted as normal workplace stress, rather than any diminishment of interest in their developing connection. The trust they had built felt strong enough to weather minor fluctuations in mood and energy, and Marcus's own confidence in their relationship had grown to the point where he felt secure enough to give Sarah space to work through whatever was distracting her. Their conversation that day was shorter than usual, but it ended with Sarah's familiar warm smile and a comment about looking forward to talking more tomorrow. Reassurances that convinced Marcus that whatever was affecting her mood was temporary and unrelated to their special bond. Little did he know that the foundation he thought they had built together was about to be tested by forces he had never considered, and that the disappointment and learning that awaited him would challenge everything he believed about reading the signs of authentic connection and the reliability of apparent mutual affection. The absence of someone who has become central to your daily routine creates a silence that reverberates through every familiar space and expected moment. And Marcus felt this void with startling intensity as Thursday morning unfolded without Sarah's anticipated presence. Her empty section remained unassigned longer than usual, creating a ripple effect of schedule adjustments and whispered conversations among the morning staff that Marcus tried to ignore while focusing on his dish station. The kitchen felt different without the possibility of her appearance during break time. Less vibrant, more mechanical, lacking the undercurrent of anticipation that had energized his recent workdays. Marcus found himself glancing toward the dining room entrance more frequently than usual, hoping to see her familiar silhouette appearing with an apologetic smile and a reasonable explanation for her tardiness. The professional environment continued to function around him, but his personal anchor point had vanished without warning or explanation, leaving him adrift in a sea of routine tasks that suddenly felt hollow and purposeless. The trust he had placed in their developing connection was being tested by the simple reality of her unexplained absence, and Marcus struggled to maintain his usual optimistic interpretation of circumstances, while fighting off the first whispers of doubt about the solidity of what they had been building together. The human mind's capacity for creating elaborate explanations to protect cherished beliefs reveals itself most clearly when faced with information that threatens our fundamental assumptions about relationships and mutual loyalty. Marcus spent the first half of his shift constructing reasonable scenarios that could account for Sarah's absence. Perhaps she was dealing with a family emergency. Maybe she had fallen ill during the night, or possibly there had been a miscommunication about her schedule that would be resolved by the afternoon shift. His imagination worked overtime to preserve the narrative of their growing connection, refusing to entertain possibilities that might suggest her absence was voluntary or connected to activities that didn't include him. The other staff members' casual acceptance of her missing shift struck Marcus as callous and unprofessional, a failure to recognize the dedication and reliability that Sarah had demonstrated during her weeks of consistent attendance. He found himself defending her character in internal conversations, reminding himself of all the evidence of her genuine appreciation for their friendship and the trust they had built through countless shared moments and meaningful conversations. The professional environment around him buzzed with the usual workplace gossip and speculation, but Marcus remained committed to giving Sarah the benefit of the doubt until he could hear her explanation directly from her own lips. The casual cruelty of workplace gossip lies in its ability to shatter carefully constructed hopes with a single offhand comment delivered without thought for its potential impact on the listener. When Jake, the afternoon prep cook, mentioned seeing Sarah leaving with the bartender the previous evening, Marcus felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of reality, not just about Sarah's absence, but about the nature of their entire relationship. The comment was delivered with the casual indifference of someone sharing meaningless restaurant gossip, But it landed on Marcus like a physical blow that knocked the breath from his lungs and left him struggling to maintain his composure at the dish station. The image of Sarah choosing to spend her evening with someone else, specifically with the charismatic bartender whose easy confidence and social status represented everything Marcus was not, created a painful contrast to the intimate conversations and shared moments that Marcus had treasured as evidence of their special connection. The disappointment that washed over him was compounded by the realization that while he had been interpreting their interactions as building toward romantic possibility, Sarah had apparently been open to exploring connections with other colleagues during the same time period. The professional environment that had felt like a sanctuary of developing love suddenly revealed itself as merely another social arena, where Marcus was destined to remain an observer rather than a participant in the kind of connection he had dared to hope was finally within his reach. The aftermath of unexpected revelation creates a unique form of psychological disorientation, where familiar surroundings suddenly feel foreign, and previously cherished memories become sources of pain rather than comfort. Marcus continued to wash dishes with mechanical precision, while his mind raced to reinterpret every interaction he had shared with Sarah through this new lens of understanding. The conversations that had felt intimate and meaningful now seemed like the friendly exchanges of someone who was simply being kind to a workplace acquaintance, and the discreet glances he had treasured as signs of mutual attraction now appeared to be nothing more than the normal social courtesy of someone acknowledging a colleague's presence. The trust he had invested in their developing relationship felt misplaced and naive, evidence of his own tendency to read romantic significance into behaviors that were probably just natural friendliness from someone who appreciated his consistent kindness. The kitchen around him continued its familiar rhythm of preparation and service, but Marcus felt disconnected from the routine that had brought him such joy when it included the possibility of shared moments with Sarah. The learning that was beginning to crystallize in his consciousness was painful, but necessary. He had confused gratitude and workplace friendship with romantic interest, projecting his own growing affection onto someone who had never given him clear signals that she shared his feelings. The complexity of modern dating within professional environments creates situations where genuine kindness and appreciation can be easily misinterpreted by those hungry for deeper connection and lasting loyalty. Marcus began to understand that Sarah's consistent warmth and engagement during their conversations had been the behavior of someone who genuinely valued their friendship while remaining open to romantic possibilities with other people. A perfectly reasonable approach that only felt hurtful because of his own emotional investment in a future that had existed primarily in his imagination. The bartender represented everything that Marcus was not: socially confident, effortlessly charming, and occupying a position within the restaurant hierarchy that naturally attracted attention and admiration from both staff and customers. While Marcus had been building hopes on foundation of shared snacks and kitchen conversations, Sarah had been navigating the broader social landscape of the restaurant, remaining open to connections that might offer more excitement and possibility than quiet moments with the dishwasher. The frustration he felt was directed as much at himself as at the situation. He should have recognized the signs that their connection, while genuine and valuable, existed in the category of friendship rather than romantic potential. The professional environment that had seemed to nurture their special bond now revealed itself as simply another social space where attraction and opportunity operated according to familiar patterns that rarely favored the quiet, steady types like Marcus. The psychology of hope and disappointment in workplace relationships operates on the dangerous principle that proximity and consistent positive interaction will naturally evolve into mutual romantic interest, a belief that ignores the complex factors that actually drive attraction and partner selection. Marcus had fallen into the trap of believing that his genuine character, consistent kindness, and patient loyalty would be sufficient to win Sarah's affection, overlooking the reality that romantic chemistry often emerges from factors that have little to do with moral character or reliable friendship. The bartender's appeal likely stemmed from qualities that Marcus couldn't offer: social charisma, professional status within the restaurant hierarchy, and the kind of effortless confidence that makes some people naturally magnetic in social situations. Sarah's decision to explore a connection with the bartender didn't invalidate the friendship she had shared with Marcus, but it clearly demonstrated that she had never viewed their interactions through the same romantic lens that had colored Marcus's interpretation of their relationship. The trust Marcus had placed in the development of their connection was genuine and well-intentioned, but it was built on assumptions rather than clear communication about mutual intentions and desires. The learning that awaited him involved accepting that genuine appreciation and workplace friendship, while valuable and meaningful, don't automatically translate into romantic possibility or exclusive emotional investment. The evening shift at Romano's restaurant proceeded with its usual controlled chaos, but Marcus found himself observing the social dynamics with new clarity and painful awareness of his own position within the workplace hierarchy. The bartender moved through his duties with practiced ease and natural charm, effortlessly engaging with both staff and customers in ways that highlighted the social skills that Marcus had never developed or valued. Watching him work, Marcus could understand why Sarah might be drawn to someone who embodied confidence and charisma, qualities that created excitement and possibility in ways that steady reliability and patient kindness simply couldn't match. The professional environment that Marcus had hoped would provide the foundation for lasting connection now revealed itself as just another social arena where certain types of people naturally attracted attention and opportunity, while others remained in supporting roles. The disappointment he felt was complicated by a growing understanding that his approach to building relationships, through consistent presence, thoughtful gestures, and patient loyalty, might be fundamentally flawed in a world where attraction often sparks quickly and burns brightly rather than developing gradually through sustained effort. The learning that was crystallizing involved accepting that he had been playing by rules that didn't match the game that everyone else was playing, and that his future romantic success would require either finding someone who valued his approach or developing new skills that could compete in the broader marketplace of attraction and connection. The modern age of social media has transformed the experience of heartbreak from private suffering into public spectacle, and Marcus discovered this cruel reality while mindlessly scrolling through Instagram during his evening break. The photograph appeared on his feed with the casual brutality of algorithmic indifference. Sarah and the bartender captured in golden hour lighting at the local beach, their bodies pressed together with the easy intimacy of people completely comfortable in each other's presence. Her smile in the photo radiated a joy and excitement that Marcus had never seen during their kitchen conversations, a luminous happiness that seemed to emerge from genuine romantic connection rather than workplace friendliness. The caption "perfect vibe" felt like a deliberate contradiction to everything Marcus had believed about their developing relationship, a public declaration that true satisfaction and affection existed elsewhere, with someone else, in experiences that had nothing to do with shared snacks and dishwashing station conversations. The professional environment where Marcus had built his hopes suddenly felt like a stage set for his own naivety, a place where he had mistaken supporting actor status for leading man potential. The trust he had placed in Sarah's apparent appreciation for their connection crumbled as he stared at evidence of where her real interests and energy were being invested. The psychology of social media revelation operates with particular cruelty because it forces us to confront the gap between our assumptions and reality through carefully curated images designed to showcase happiness and success. Marcus found himself studying every detail of the photograph with the obsessive focus of someone trying to understand how completely he had misread a situation that had felt so promising and mutual. Sarah's body language in the photo spoke of genuine comfort and attraction. The way she leaned into the bartender's embrace, the natural positioning of her hand on his chest, the unguarded expression of someone experiencing authentic romantic connection. The timing of the photo, taken during what should have been her scheduled shift, added another layer of painful understanding about her priorities and the relative importance of their workplace relationship in her life. Marcus realized that while he had been treasuring their daily conversations as the foundation of something special, Sarah had been living a full social and romantic life that existed entirely separate from their interactions. The disappointment that washed over him was compounded by the recognition that he had been operating under completely false assumptions about the exclusivity and significance of the attention she had been giving him during their kitchen conversations. The art of social media curation reveals uncomfortable truths about how people choose to present their lives and relationships to the world. And Marcus found himself confronting the reality that Sarah's relationship with the bartender had apparently progressed to the point where she felt comfortable making it public. The beach setting, the casual intimacy of their pose, and the confident caption suggested a level of romantic development that could only have emerged from sustained interaction and mutual interest, time and attention that had been happening parallel to her daily conversations with Marcus. The photograph represented everything that Marcus had hoped their relationship might become: natural physical affection, shared adventures outside the professional environment, and the kind of mutual loyalty that makes people want to broadcast their happiness to the world. Instead of being the recipient of Sarah's romantic attention, Marcus found himself in the position of unwilling observer to her connection with someone else, forced to witness through social media the very experiences he had been hoping to create with her. The learning that was crystallizing involved accepting that he had been participating in what he thought was courtship, while Sarah had been engaging in what she considered friendship, leaving him emotionally invested in possibilities that had never existed outside his own imagination. The brutal efficiency of photographic evidence lies in its ability to communicate complex emotional and relational realities without requiring explanation or justification. And Marcus found himself unable to construct alternative narratives to explain away what he was seeing. The genuine happiness in Sarah's expression, the natural chemistry evident in their positioning, and the public nature of the declaration all pointed to a relationship that had moved far beyond casual workplace flirtation into genuine romantic territory. Marcus realized that while he had been interpreting Sarah's consistent kindness and engagement as signs of growing affection, she had been building something real and substantial with someone else, someone who possessed the social confidence and natural charisma that Marcus had never developed. The professional environment where Marcus had felt most hopeful about his romantic prospects now seemed like a cruel stage where he had performed the role of potential suitor, while the real drama was happening elsewhere, with different actors playing the leads. The trust he had placed in the significance of their shared moments felt misplaced and naive, evidence of his own tendency to overinterpret friendly behavior as romantic interest. The disappointment was particularly acute because it forced him to confront not just the loss of this specific possibility, but the fundamental flaws in his approach to building romantic connections. The aftermath of social media revelation creates a unique form of cognitive dissonance, where cherished memories must be completely recontextualized in light of new information about their true significance and meaning. Marcus found himself revisiting every conversation he had shared with Sarah, reinterpreting her laughter, her questions about his life, and her apparent interest in his thoughts and perspectives through the lens of someone who had been genuinely friendly without ever considering him as a romantic prospect. The appreciation she had shown for his kindness and character was real, but it existed in the category of workplace friendship rather than romantic possibility, a distinction that Marcus had failed to recognize because of his own growing emotional investment in their interactions. The bartender's success in winning Sarah's affection highlighted everything that Marcus lacked in terms of social skills, professional status, and natural charisma, creating a painful comparison that undermined his confidence in his own romantic prospects. The professional environment that had seemed to provide opportunities for meaningful connection now revealed itself as simply another social hierarchy, where certain types of people naturally attracted romantic attention, while others remained relegated to supporting roles. The learning involved accepting that his approach to relationships, built on patience, consistency, and gradual emotional investment, might be fundamentally incompatible with the way modern romance actually develops in social and professional settings. The evening hours that followed Marcus's discovery of the Instagram post stretched endlessly as he struggled to process the complete reorganization of his understanding about Sarah, their relationship, and his own judgment about romantic possibility. The image remained burned in his memory with photographic clarity: her radiant smile, their comfortable intimacy, the caption that declared their connection perfect in ways that his careful gestures and patient attention had apparently never achieved. Marcus began to understand that whatever he had been offering Sarah Loyalty, consistency, thoughtful attention to her needs simply couldn't compete with the excitement and social validation that came from dating someone like the bartender. The frustration he felt was directed as much at himself as at the situation, recognizing that he had fallen into the classic trap of believing that being a good person and treating someone well would be sufficient to win their romantic interest. The professional environment where he had built his hopes now felt like a reminder of his own social limitations and inability to compete for attention in the broader marketplace of attraction and connection. The trust he had placed in the development of their relationship had been genuine, but misguided, built on assumptions rather than clear communication about mutual intentions and desires. The cruel irony of workplace romance lies in how proximity and consistent interaction can create the illusion of special connection, while masking the reality that one person's friendly professionalism is being interpreted as romantic interest by someone desperate for affection and lasting partnership. Marcus spent the remainder of his evening shift processing the painful learning that genuine kindness and appreciation, while valuable qualities in friendship, don't automatically translate into romantic attraction or exclusive emotional investment. The bartender's natural advantages, social confidence, professional status, and effortless charisma had apparently been sufficient to capture Sarah's romantic attention in ways that Marcus's patient courtship never could. The disappointment he experienced was compounded by the recognition that he had been living in a fantasy of his own creation, interpreting neutral behaviors through the lens of his own desires, and building elaborate hopes on foundations that existed primarily in his imagination. The professional environment that had seemed to nurture their special bond now revealed itself as just another social space where attraction and opportunity operated according to familiar patterns that rarely favored the quiet, steady types who believe that character and consistency should matter more than charisma and social positioning. The photograph on Instagram would remain as evidence of how completely he had misunderstood both Sarah's intentions and his own prospects for romantic success in the complex social dynamics of modern workplace relationships. The peculiar cruelty of human behavior often reveals itself most clearly in moments when someone returns to familiar routines after fundamentally altering the emotional landscape for everyone around them. And Marcus experienced this phenomenon firsthand when Sarah appeared for her Friday morning shift with her usual punctuality and professional demeanor. Her entrance into the restaurant carried no acknowledgement of her previous day's absence, no explanation for the Instagram revelation that had shattered Marcus's assumptions about their relationship, and no apparent awareness that anything significant had changed in their workplace dynamic. She moved through her opening duties with practiced efficiency, greeting colleagues with her customary warmth, and settling into her section as if the beach photo and perfect vibe caption existed in a completely separate universe from their professional environment. The trust that Marcus had placed in their developing connection now felt like evidence of his own naivety, as Sarah's behavior suggested that their daily conversations and shared moments had never carried the significance that he had attributed to them. The cognitive dissonance of watching someone act completely normal after destroying your romantic hopes creates a particular form of emotional whiplash that leaves you questioning not just their character, but your own ability to read human behavior and understand the true nature of interpersonal connections. The psychology of avoidance in workplace relationships operates on the principle that pretending uncomfortable realities don't exist will somehow make them disappear. But Marcus found that Sarah's strategy of normalcy only intensified his awareness of how completely he had misunderstood their interactions. Her casual greeting when she passed the dish station, delivered with the same friendly tone she had always used, felt like a masterclass in emotional compartmentalization that highlighted the vast difference between her experience of their relationship and his own investment in its development. Marcus realized that what he had interpreted as growing intimacy and mutual affection had apparently been nothing more than workplace courtesy from someone who was genuinely kind but never romantically interested. The professional environment that had felt charged with possibility now seemed to mock his romantic assumptions as Sarah moved through her duties without any apparent need to address or acknowledge the shift in their dynamic. Her ability to maintain normal social interactions while completely ignoring the emotional impact of her choices revealed a level of social sophistication that Marcus had never developed, highlighting another area where he was fundamentally unprepared for the complexities of modern relationships. The disappointment he felt was compounded by admiration for her ability to navigate social situations with such apparent ease, even as her behavior left him feeling invisible and emotionally irrelevant. The art of strategic silence in the face of profound disappointment serves multiple purposes. It preserves dignity, prevents further humiliation, and creates space for processing complex emotions without the pressure of immediate social performance. Marcus chose to channel his energy into the familiar rhythm of dishwashing, finding comfort in the mechanical precision of his work, while his mind struggled to reconcile Sarah's casual normalcy with the romantic connection he had believed they were building together. The warm water and endless stream of plates provided a meditative focus that helped him avoid the temptation to confront Sarah about her absence or demand explanations that would only serve to highlight his own misinterpretation of their relationship. His silence wasn't born from anger or petulance, but from the learning that some situations require internal processing before external communication becomes possible or productive. The professional environment continued to function around him with its usual efficiency, but Marcus felt disconnected from the social dynamics that had once brought him such hope and anticipation. The loyalty he had felt towards Sarah now seemed misplaced and naive, evidence of his own tendency to invest emotionally in possibilities that existed primarily in his imagination rather than in shared reality. The morning hours passed with excruciating slowness, as Marcus navigated the challenge of maintaining professional composure while processing the complete reorganization of his understanding about Sarah's character and their relationship potential. Her attempts to engage him in their usual casual conversation during the mid-morning lull felt simultaneously familiar and completely foreign, as if she were speaking a language he had thought he understood, but now realized he had been misinterpreting all along. Marcus found that her friendly questions about his morning and observations about the restaurant's busy schedule carried none of the special significance he had previously attributed to their interactions, revealing themselves as the standard social courtesy of someone maintaining workplace relationships rather than the intimate exchanges he had treasured as evidence of growing affection. The trust he had placed in the authenticity of their connection now felt like evidence of his own desperation for romantic validation, leading him to project meaning onto behaviors that were probably just natural friendliness from someone who appreciated his consistent kindness. Her apparent comfort with the status quo highlighted the vast difference between her experience of their relationship and his own emotional investment, creating a painful awareness of how completely he had misread the signals and significance of their daily interactions. The complexity of workplace social dynamics becomes most apparent when romantic assumptions collide with professional necessity, forcing individuals to navigate the gap between personal disappointment and occupational requirements. Sarah's behavior suggested someone who had never viewed their interactions through a romantic lens and was therefore genuinely confused by any shift in Marcus's demeanor or engagement level during their usual conversations. Her continued attempts to maintain their customary friendly banter revealed either remarkable emotional intelligence or complete obliviousness to the impact of her choices on someone who had clearly invested more significance in their relationship than she had ever intended. Marcus began to understand that his silence might be interpreted as moodiness or unprofessional behavior, rather than the natural response of someone processing romantic disappointment and attempting to maintain dignity in an uncomfortable situation. The professional environment that had once felt like a sanctuary of developing love now seemed like a minefield, where every interaction carried the potential for further humiliation or misunderstanding. The learning that was crystallizing involved accepting that his emotional response to Sarah's choices was his own responsibility to manage, regardless of how thoughtlessly she had handled the situation, or how completely she seemed to misunderstand the impact of her behavior on his feelings and expectations. The afternoon shift brought its own challenges as Marcus struggled to maintain focus on his duties, while hyper-aware of Sarah's presence and behavior throughout the restaurant, searching for signs that might help him understand how someone could be so oblivious to the emotional wreckage they had created. Her interactions with other staff members revealed the same consistent warmth and professional courtesy that he had mistaken for special appreciation of his character and potential as a romantic partner. Marcus realized that Sarah's kindness was apparently her default mode of social interaction, rather than a sign of particular interest in him, a recognition that forced him to confront his own tendency to interpret neutral behaviors through the lens of his romantic hopes and desires. The frustration he felt was directed as much at himself as at Sarah, acknowledging that he had created elaborate assumptions about their relationship without ever seeking clear communication about mutual intentions or romantic interest. Her ability to maintain normal workplace interactions while apparently remaining completely unaware of his emotional investment highlighted a level of social compartmentalization that Marcus found both impressive and infuriating. The professional environment that had seemed to nurture their special bond now revealed itself as simply another social space where his romantic assumptions had been built on foundations of wishful thinking rather than genuine mutual affection and shared vision for the future. The closing hours of Marcus's shift provided an opportunity for reflection on the broader implications of his experience with Sarah and the learning that would be necessary to avoid similar disappointments in future romantic endeavors. Her consistent behavior throughout the day had demonstrated that whatever connection they had shared existed entirely in the category of workplace friendship, and that his interpretation of romantic possibility had been a product of his own emotional needs, rather than accurate reading of her intentions or interest level. The trust he had placed in the development of their relationship had been genuine but fundamentally misguided, built on assumptions rather than clear communication about mutual desires and expectations for their connection. Marcus began to understand that his approach to building romantic relationships, through patient loyalty, consistent kindness, and gradual emotional investment, required much clearer communication about intentions and mutual interest to avoid the kind of one-sided emotional development that had led to his current situation. The professional environment where he had built his hopes would continue to function around him, but Marcus knew that his future interactions with Sarah would need to be recalibrated to match the reality of their friendship, rather than the romantic possibilities he had imagined were developing between them. The moment when someone attempts to retroactively manage the emotional damage they've caused often reveals more about their character than their original thoughtless behavior, and Sarah's belated attempt at explanation carried all the hallmarks of someone trying to alleviate their own guilt, rather than genuinely address the impact of their choices. Her words, delivered with the kind of patronizing sweetness that transforms kindness into condescension, suggested that she had always been aware of Marcus's romantic interest, but had chosen to ignore it rather than address it directly when honest communication might have prevented deeper emotional investment. The phrase, "so sweet," carried the particular cruelty of language that reduces complex human beings to harmless, sexless categories, effectively communicating that Marcus had never been considered a viable romantic prospect, while simultaneously acknowledging that his feelings were obvious enough to require management. Her claim about not wanting to cause hurt rang hollow in the context of her Instagram posts and casual absence, revealing the self-serving nature of explanations that arrive only after someone has been caught in thoughtless behavior. The professional environment that had witnessed their developing friendship now became the stage for this uncomfortable conversation, highlighting how workplace relationships can become complicated when romantic assumptions collide with social realities, and the need to maintain functional professional dynamics despite personal disappointment and damaged trust. The psychology of delayed explanation in romantic disappointment operates on the principle that acknowledgement of hurt feelings will somehow retroactively justify the behavior that caused them, but Marcus recognized Sarah's words for what they truly represented, an attempt to maintain her self-image as a caring person, while avoiding responsibility for the thoughtless way she had handled his obvious interest. Her explanation carried no actual apology for leading him on or failing to communicate clearly about her lack of romantic interest, instead focusing on her own good intentions while ignoring the impact of her choices on someone who had invested genuine emotion and hope in their developing connection. The trust that Marcus had placed in their relationship had been violated not just by her romantic involvement with someone else, but by her apparent awareness of his feelings and her decision to manage them through avoidance rather than honest communication. Marcus understood that Sarah's approach to the situation revealed a fundamental incompatibility in their values and communication styles. She preferred to avoid difficult conversations, even when such avoidance would inevitably cause greater pain, while he valued directness and honesty, even when the truth might be initially uncomfortable. The learning that was crystallizing involved recognizing that some people prioritize their own comfort over others' emotional well-being, and that such individuals are fundamentally unsuitable as romantic partners, regardless of their other attractive qualities or apparent appreciation for kindness and character. The art of perfectly timed verbal response reveals itself in moments when accumulated disappointment and learning crystallize into clarity that cuts through pretense and social nicety to address the heart of interpersonal dysfunction. Marcus's reply, "You should have served me the truth with breakfast," carried the weight of someone who had processed his experience enough to understand both what had happened and what should have happened differently. His words acknowledged the symbolic significance of that original gesture, while highlighting how Sarah's acceptance of his kindness, without honest communication about her romantic availability, had set the stage for exactly the kind of hurt she now claimed to want to avoid. The metaphor connected their entire relationship arc to that first moment of thoughtful generosity, suggesting that authentic connection requires reciprocal honesty rather than one-sided emotional investment managed through polite avoidance of difficult topics. Marcus's response demonstrated that he had learned to value direct communication over comfortable illusions, even when such directness might make social interactions temporarily more challenging or uncomfortable. The professional environment around them continued its familiar rhythm, but this exchange marked a fundamental shift in their dynamic from unequal emotional investment to clear-eyed recognition of incompatible values and communication styles. The power of metaphorical truth-telling lies in its ability to communicate complex emotional and relational insights through simple, concrete imagery that resonates with shared experience and highlights the gap between ideal and actual behavior. Marcus's breakfast metaphor captured everything that had gone wrong in their interaction. Sarah's willingness to accept thoughtful gestures while withholding the honest communication that would have allowed him to make informed decisions about his emotional investment. His words suggested that genuine loyalty and trust require mutual transparency about intentions, availability, and romantic interest, rather than the kind of selective honesty that prioritizes immediate comfort over long-term emotional integrity. The reference to serving truth acknowledged that difficult conversations are sometimes necessary acts of kindness, even when they involve disappointing someone whose feelings are genuine, but not reciprocated. Marcus's response revealed that he had learned to distinguish between authentic care, which includes honest communication even when it's uncomfortable, and superficial niceness that protects the giver's self-image at the expense of the receiver's emotional well-being. The professional environment that had facilitated their developing friendship now became witness to Marcus's evolution, from naive romantic optimist to someone who understood the importance of demanding honesty and transparency in all significant relationships. The aftermath of perfectly delivered truth often creates a moment of recognition, where both parties understand that fundamental differences in values and communication styles have been revealed beyond the possibility of comfortable denial or social accommodation. Sarah's reaction to Marcus's metaphorical response, a combination of surprise, defensiveness, and dawning awareness that her explanation had been inadequate, confirmed that she had never seriously considered how her behavior might appear to someone who had invested genuine emotion in their developing connection. Her discomfort with his directness revealed someone who preferred to navigate difficult situations through implication and avoidance, rather than the kind of honest communication that builds genuine trust and lasting loyalty between people. Marcus recognized that their interaction had exposed incompatible approaches to relationships and conflict resolution that would make any future connection, romantic or platonic, fundamentally problematic, regardless of their individual positive qualities or mutual appreciation for each other's character. The learning involved understanding that some personality differences are too fundamental to overcome through patience or goodwill, and that recognizing such incompatibilities early can prevent more serious disappointment and emotional damage in long-term relationships. The professional environment would continue to require them to interact cordially and professionally, but Marcus now understood exactly what kind of connection was possible between them and what boundaries would be necessary to protect his own emotional well-being going forward. The resolution that emerges from honest confrontation often provides clarity that polite avoidance never could, and Marcus found that his direct response to Sarah's explanation had created a new foundation for their ongoing workplace relationship, built on mutual understanding rather than romantic assumption or social pretense. Her defensive reaction to his breakfast metaphor confirmed that she had indeed been aware of his interest and had chosen to manage it through selective attention and avoidance, rather than the kind of honest communication that might have prevented deeper emotional investment and more significant disappointment. Marcus realized that Sarah's approach to difficult interpersonal situations, prioritizing immediate comfort over long-term emotional integrity, was fundamentally incompatible with his own values around loyalty, trust, and authentic communication in meaningful relationships. The professional environment that had once seemed charged with romantic possibility now felt more manageable and clearly defined, as both parties understood exactly what kind of connection was appropriate and sustainable, given their different values and communication styles. The learning that had emerged from this painful experience would serve Marcus well in future romantic endeavors, helping him recognize the importance of seeking clear communication about mutual interest and availability, rather than building elaborate hopes on foundations of assumption and wishful thinking. The wisdom that emerges from romantic disappointment often crystallizes into insights that transform future relationship approaches and expectations, and Marcus found that his experience with Sarah had provided valuable learning about the difference between genuine romantic possibility and one-sided emotional investment disguised as mutual connection. His breakfast metaphor had effectively communicated that authentic relationships require reciprocal honesty from the beginning, rather than the kind of selective transparency that allows one person to benefit from another's kindness, while avoiding difficult conversations about romantic availability and mutual interest. The trust that had been damaged through Sarah's thoughtless behavior couldn't be rebuilt through belated explanations that focused on her good intentions rather than the impact of her choices. But the clarity that emerged from their honest exchange provided a much more solid foundation for ongoing professional interaction than continued pretense or social avoidance. Marcus understood that the professional environment would continue to require cordial cooperation between them, but he now possessed the emotional boundaries and communication skills necessary to maintain appropriate distance while protecting his own well-being from further romantic disappointment. The experience had transformed him from someone who hoped that patience and kindness would be sufficient to win romantic affection into someone who understood the necessity of seeking clear, mutual communication about intentions and interest before investing significant emotion in relationship possibilities that might exist primarily in his own imagination. The cyclical nature of workplace romance reveals itself most clearly when external circumstances eliminate the competition and suddenly make previously dismissed options appear attractive again. And Marcus witnessed this phenomenon firsthand when Sarah began seeking him out with renewed interest following the bartender's unexpected termination. Her attempts to re-establish their former closeness carried the transparent desperation of someone whose primary romantic option had vanished and who was now reconsidering previously overlooked alternatives with sudden appreciation. The timing of her renewed attention, arriving precisely when her relationship with the bartender had become impossible due to his professional dismissal, highlighted the opportunistic nature of her interest in reconnecting with Marcus. Her behavior suggested someone who viewed relationships as interchangeable options, rather than unique connections built on genuine compatibility and mutual affection, approaching Marcus as a convenient backup plan, rather than recognizing him as a person whose feelings and trust had been damaged by her previous thoughtless choices. The professional environment that had once witnessed their developing friendship now became the stage for Sarah's attempted emotional rehabilitation, as she tried to resurrect a connection that she had carelessly discarded when more appealing options were available. The learning that Marcus had gained from their previous interaction would now be tested by the temptation to interpret her renewed interest as validation of his worth rather than recognition of her limited alternatives. The psychology of romantic rebound behavior in workplace settings operates on the principle that proximity and familiarity can substitute for genuine loyalty and emotional investment. But Marcus had developed enough wisdom through his painful experience to recognize Sarah's overtures for what they truly represented. Her sudden return to seeking him out during breaks, her renewed interest in their conversations, and her apparent enthusiasm for rebuilding their former connection all carried the hallmarks of someone trying to recreate a safety net rather than pursue authentic romantic possibility. The trust that had been shattered by her previous behavior couldn't be rebuilt through convenient timing and renewed attention, especially when that attention was clearly motivated by the elimination of her preferred option rather than genuine recognition of Marcus's value as a potential partner. Marcus understood that accepting Sarah's renewed interest would mean accepting a position as secondary choice, someone to be pursued when primary options were unavailable, and discarded when more appealing alternatives emerged. The professional environment continued to function around them, but Marcus now possessed the emotional intelligence to distinguish between genuine romantic interest and opportunistic relationship management designed to provide emotional security during transitional periods. The disappointment he had experienced during their first interaction had evolved into wisdom that protected him from making similar emotional investments in people who viewed relationships as matters of convenience rather than commitment. The art of graceful boundary setting reveals itself most clearly when someone who has learned from painful experience must navigate renewed romantic pressure from someone whose values and behavior patterns have already proven incompatible with authentic connection. Sarah's attempts to re-establish their former intimacy included all the familiar elements that had initially attracted Marcus: shared conversations, interested questions about his life, and the kind of focused attention that had previously made him feel special and valued. However, Marcus now understood that these behaviors represented Sarah's standard approach to managing workplace relationships, rather than evidence of particular interest in him as an individual or potential romantic partner. Her renewed appreciation for his character and consistency felt hollow in light of how quickly she had abandoned their connection when the bartender had offered more exciting possibilities, revealing someone whose romantic choices were driven by circumstance and availability rather than genuine compatibility or lasting affection. The professional environment that had once facilitated their developing friendship now required careful navigation to maintain appropriate boundaries while avoiding the kind of dramatic confrontation that could make their ongoing work relationship uncomfortable or dysfunctional. Marcus had learned that protecting his own emotional well-being required clear communication about his boundaries and intentions, rather than the kind of polite avoidance that had characterized Sarah's previous approach to difficult interpersonal situations. The wisdom that emerges from romantic disappointment often crystallizes into the ability to recognize patterns of behavior that reveal fundamental character traits incompatible with lasting partnership, and Marcus found himself applying this learning as he observed Sarah's renewed attempts at connection. Her approach to rebuilding their relationship showed no acknowledgement of how her previous behavior had affected him, no genuine apology for the thoughtless way she had handled his obvious interest, and no evidence that she had developed different values or communication skills that might prevent similar problems in future relationships. Instead, her behavior suggested someone who expected to resume their former connection without addressing the trust issues that her previous choices had created, approaching their relationship as if his feelings and boundaries were secondary to her current emotional needs and romantic availability. Marcus recognized that Sarah's renewed interest was motivated by convenience rather than genuine recognition of his worth, making any romantic involvement with her a recipe for repeated disappointment and emotional manipulation. The professional environment where they both worked would continue to require cordial interaction, but Marcus now understood the importance of maintaining clear boundaries that protected his emotional well-being while allowing for functional workplace cooperation. The loyalty he had once felt towards Sarah had been replaced by loyalty to his own growth and emotional health, prioritizing his long-term well-being over the temporary validation that might come from accepting her renewed attention. The power of perfectly timed verbal boundaries lies in their ability to communicate complex emotional truths through simple, memorable phrases that establish clear expectations while maintaining dignity and professional appropriateness. Marcus's response, "Here I only wash dishes, hearts no more," captured everything that had changed in his perspective since their first interaction. Acknowledging his professional role, while clearly communicating that he was no longer available for the kind of emotional investment that had previously made him vulnerable to disappointment and manipulation. His words carried the weight of someone who had learned to distinguish between his professional identity and his romantic availability, refusing to allow workplace proximity to create opportunities for renewed emotional confusion or one-sided investment. The metaphor of washing dishes versus hearts highlighted the fundamental shift in his approach to workplace relationships. He would continue to perform his job duties with professional competence while protecting his emotional well-being from people whose values and behavior patterns had proven incompatible with authentic connection. Marcus's response demonstrated that genuine learning from romantic disappointment involves developing the ability to set clear boundaries with kindness but firmness, refusing to allow past emotional investment to create ongoing vulnerability to manipulation or opportunistic relationship management. The professional environment that had once seemed charged with romantic possibility now felt more manageable and clearly defined, as Marcus had developed the wisdom and communication skills necessary to maintain appropriate distance while continuing to function effectively in his workplace role. The resolution that emerges from successful boundary setting often provides a sense of empowerment and clarity that transforms not just the immediate relationship, but one's entire approach to romantic possibility and emotional investment. Sarah's reaction to Marcus's clear communication, a combination of surprise, frustration, and dawning recognition that her renewed romantic strategy had failed, confirmed that she had expected to easily re-establish their former connection without addressing the fundamental issues that had made their previous interaction problematic. Her discomfort with his boundaries revealed someone who had never seriously considered how her opportunistic approach to relationships might appear to people who valued consistency, loyalty, and genuine emotional investment over convenience and circumstantial availability. Marcus found that maintaining his boundaries felt more comfortable and authentic than the vulnerable emotional investment that had characterized his previous approach to their relationship, providing evidence that he had successfully learned to prioritize his own emotional well-being over the temporary validation that might come from accepting attention from someone whose values were incompatible with lasting partnership. The professional environment continued to require them to work together, but Marcus now possessed the emotional tools necessary to maintain cordial professional relationships without allowing workplace proximity to create opportunities for romantic confusion or emotional manipulation. The trust that had been damaged by Sarah's previous behavior couldn't be rebuilt through convenient timing and renewed interest, but the wisdom that emerged from their interaction would serve Marcus well in future romantic endeavors, where mutual respect, consistent values, and authentic communication could provide the foundation for genuine connection and lasting affection. The transformation that occurs when someone successfully navigates romantic disappointment and develops healthy boundaries often extends far beyond the immediate relationship to influence their entire approach to love, trust, and emotional investment in future partnerships. Marcus's experience with Sarah had taught him to distinguish between genuine romantic interest and opportunistic relationship management, between authentic appreciation for his character and convenient attention during transitional periods, and between the kind of loyalty that withstands external pressures and the superficial affection that shifts based on circumstance and availability. The professional environment that had once seemed like a potential source of romantic connection now felt more like a neutral space where he could practice maintaining appropriate boundaries while developing the confidence and communication skills necessary for healthier future relationships. His response to Sarah's renewed interest demonstrated that he had successfully learned to value his own emotional well-being over the temporary validation that comes from accepting attention from people whose values and behavior patterns are fundamentally incompatible with authentic partnership. The wisdom gained through this painful but educational experience would help Marcus recognize and pursue relationships built on mutual respect, consistent communication, and genuine compatibility, rather than the kind of one-sided emotional investment that had previously left him vulnerable to disappointment and manipulation by people who viewed romance as a matter of convenience rather than commitment to lasting connection and shared growth. If this content has opened your eyes to new possibilities for learning and growth, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. We're building a community of people who refuse to settle for superficial connections and are committed to mastering the art of authentic relationships in both professional and personal settings. Your journey toward genuine loyalty and lasting affection is just beginning.